I'll
So
give you
I,
$100,000 if you can fix this engine. But when you fail, you'll admit in front of everyone that women know nothing about cars. Bradford Steele's voice echoed through the
I'll
glittering
put jail.
Platinum
The
Motors
hash front
showroom,
too.
each
Right.
word sharpened with arrogance as his Rolex glimmered beneath the chandelier. Leaning casually against his crippled Lamborghini, he smirked at Angela Carter, a woman in grease-stained overalls who seemed terribly out of place in this temple of wealth. Around them, nearly 20 wealthy men erupted into cruel laughter, their voices bouncing off the marble walls like an arena filled with spectators. Some pulled out their phones, eager to capture what they believed would be the humiliation of the century, while others whispered with mocking delight, "A woman mechanic? A black woman mechanic? Ridiculous." Their ridicule grew louder, sharper, as though every insult were a dagger meant to strip Angela of her dignity. Yet she stood calm, her gaze unwavering, her silence louder than the chorus of laughter that filled the room. She hadn't come for this circus, only to pick up a part for her modest suburban repair shop. But a single correction of the dealership's head mechanic had provoked Bradford's fury, and now her competence, her very identity, was under attack. She remembered her grandfather's words, "Engines don't care about your color or gender. They only care if you understand them." Taking a measured step closer to the car, she laid her hand lightly on its hood, the jeers behind her swelling like a storm. To the onlookers, this was a comedy, a bet already won. But none of them realized that every laugh, every cruel word, every arrogant wager was only feeding a fire inside her that would soon roar louder than any engine. Would you take such a humiliating bet if the whole world doubted you? Subscribe now to see what happened next. Angela Carter had never fit into the boxes the world tried to place her in. From the time she was a little girl, she preferred the smell of motor oil to perfume, the sound of an engine struggling to breathe over the chatter of dolls. Her earliest memories were of standing beside her grandfather in his dusty junkyard, watching him pull apart rusty engines and patiently explain every piece. "Engines are like people," he used to say. "They may look broken, but if you listen closely, they'll tell you exactly what they need." Those words became Angela's compass, guiding her through years of doubt and prejudice. By the time she was 16, she could rebuild an engine faster than most of the men in her neighborhood, yet the world still refused to see her as anything but a young black girl out of her place. In college, professors raised eyebrows when she walked into advanced engineering classes, as if her very presence were a mistake on the roster. During her first internship at a reputable repair shop, she was given a mop instead of a wrench, told that women are good at organizing, not fixing. She remembered the sting of humiliation as her male peers were handed projects while she was left to sweep floors. But instead of crushing her spirit, each slight carved out a deeper determination within her. She studied harder, worked longer, and eventually earned a degree in mechanical engineering with honors. What no one outside the industry knew was that Angela had once served as a technical consultant for Lamborghini itself, secretly working on cutting-edge projects that pushed the boundaries of performance and safety. But her contract had been confidential, and without the prestige of a famous last name or the public recognition of her role, no one in the glittering world of Beverly Hills dealerships had any idea who she truly was. All they saw when she walked into Platinum Motors that afternoon was a woman in oil-stained coveralls, a nobody standing among millionaires. She had only come to collect a part she had ordered for her small suburban garage, a humble shop where she worked tirelessly to keep everyday people's cars running. That garage was her pride, though it barely paid the bills, and she wore her dirt-streaked overalls with the quiet dignity of someone who knew the value of honest labor. The contrast between her and the men who now circled her like vultures could not have been starker. They wore Italian suits and $1,000 watches. She wore calloused hands and memories of long nights bent over stubborn engines. Yet beneath their wealth and arrogance, Angela sensed fragility, an emptiness they tried to fill with mockery. As their laughter echoed through the dealership's marble halls, she stood tall, knowing something they didn't. Competence doesn't need a costume. It only needs truth. And soon that truth would silence every cruel laugh in the room. Bradford Steele circled Angela like a predator savoring his prey, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor as he raised his voice for the crowd. Gentlemen, take a good look, he declared, gesturing with theatrical flair toward her. Here we have a so-called mechanic who believes she knows more than my factory-certified experts. His words dripped with condescension, every syllable designed to reduce her to a punchline. The men around him roared with laughter, some clapping, others pulling out cash to place informal bets on how long before she gave up. I give her 5 minutes, one snickered. 3, another chimed in. She'll run crying before she even touches the hood. Bradford paused dramatically, his smirk widening. I'll bet she doesn't even know the difference between a piston and a carburetor. His insult sliced through the air, cruel and deliberate, drawing another wave of ridicule. Angela felt the sting, but she didn't flinch. Inside, she could still hear the voice of her grandfather, calm and steady. Engines don't care about color or gender. They only care if you understand them. Still, she could not ignore the pain. Memories surged. Her first internship when she was handed a broom instead of a wrench. The smirks from classmates when she outscored them in engineering exams. The countless moments when men assumed she was incapable before she even touched a tool. Each memory pressed against her chest like a weight, yet instead of breaking her, it forged steel within her. Bradford leaned closer, his voice a venomous whisper meant for everyone to hear. My Lamborghini has been sitting dead for 2 weeks. 4 different mechanics have failed. And you think you can succeed where they couldn't? Prove it, sweetheart. The crowd erupted again, the word sweetheart stinging with venom. Angela took a slow breath, her expression unreadable. She stepped towards a car, her fingers brushing the glossy hood, feeling its quiet vibration. Something subtle, almost invisible, caught her trained senses. The way the cables were positioned, the faint, irregular sound when Bradford had tried to start it, the peculiar color of smoke that lingered in the exhaust. To anyone else, these were meaningless details, but to Angela, it was a map, a story waiting to be read. What if I can? She asked evenly, her voice calm and clear. Bradford threw back his head and laughed, his arrogance filling the room. Impossible. But if by some miracle you do, I'll hand you $100,000 in cash right here. And when you fail, you'll get down on your knees and apologize for wasting the time of real mechanics. The crowd jeered, phones tilted to capture every second of her impending defeat. Angela's heart pounded, but her face remained serene. For years, she had lived this same scene in smaller ways, dismissed, underestimated, belittled. But never had the stakes been so high, and never had the spotlight been so harsh. Yet something inside her whispered that this was not just another insult to endure. This was her moment to turn humiliation into triumph. As she placed both hands on the hood, silence rippled briefly through the room. A strange confidence flickered in her eyes, confusing a few of the men who had expected fear. Angela had already seen enough to know the car's secrets, and the truth behind Bradford's arrogance was about to surface. The stage was set, and the storm was only beginning. The tension inside Platinum Motors thickened like smoke as Angela lifted her gaze from the Lamborghini's hood. I'll need specific tools, she said evenly, her voice firm but polite. A European diagnostic scanner for post-2020 models, an ECU reprogramming kit, and a few calibration instruments. The room erupted in laughter, the men's voices bouncing off the marble walls like cruel echoes. Bradford sneered, folding his arms across his chest. Special tools, huh? Sounds more like excuses. Maybe you'd prefer a magic wand? Face it, you don't even know where to start. His friends chuckled, raising champagne glasses as if this were merely a theatrical performance. But Angela didn't flinch. Instead, she calmly pulled out her phone. It's not an excuse, it's called preparation. I'll call my supplier. The tools will be here in 2 hours. She stepped aside, her voice low but steady, while the crowd jeered louder, convinced she was stalling. 2 hours of free theater, Bradford muttered loudly enough for everyone to hear, flashing his predatory grin. Gentlemen, let's enjoy the show. But Angela's call was not to some faceless supplier. It was to Henry Lawson, a senior engineer at Lamborghini North America, and her former supervisor, the man who had once trusted her with projects that most mechanics could only dream of. When his van arrived, sleek and loaded with advanced diagnostic equipment, the room fell abruptly silent. This was no ordinary repair kit. It was a rolling fortress of cutting-edge technology worth more than most of the cars in the lot. Henry stepped out, tall and confident, his uniform pristine, his ID badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. "Angela Carter?" he asked with a knowing smile. "That's me," she replied, her voice calm but her eyes filled with gratitude. Whispers surged through the crowd. Who was this man? What was happening? Bradford stepped forward, bristling with indignation. "You can't bring outside help. This is supposed to be between you and me." Henry extended a card, his tone professional. "Henry Lawson, senior engineer, Lamborghini North America. I'm here to provide technical support with authorized equipment. Miss Carter will perform the work." The men who had come for cheap entertainment suddenly grew restless. The atmosphere shifted from mockery to unease. This was no longer a circus. It was becoming official. Angela connected the first scanner, her hands moving with practiced precision. Within seconds, the screen displayed data that made Henry's brow furrow. He leaned in, whispering so only she could hear. "Unauthorized software modifications. A counterfeit performance chip installed about 3 months ago." Angela's lips tightened. Out loud, her voice was calm. "This system has been tampered with. Someone installed an incompatible chip that conflicts with the engine's management system." Murmurs erupted. "Counterfeit?" one man gasped. Henry's voice grew louder, his tone crisp and formal. "Unauthorized modifications, void warranties, and create serious safety risks. Whoever did this put lives in danger." Bradford shifted uncomfortably, sweat glistening at his temple. "That's irrelevant. She just needs to get the car running." Angela turned her steady gaze on him. "It's very relevant, Mr. Steele. Because whoever installed this didn't just make a mistake. They tried to cheat you." Bradford's jaw tightened, his eyes darting nervously. She noticed the flicker of guilt, the subtle defensiveness in his tone, the way he avoided her gaze when she mentioned the previous mechanics. There was a story buried here, one she was determined to unearth. Over the next hour, Angela worked carefully, documenting every counterfeit piece, every unauthorized change. Each part removed was logged by Henry with official Lamborghini equipment. The deeper they dug, the clearer it became. This was no accident. Someone had deliberately sabotaged the car with fake components, risking catastrophic failure. The crowd grew silent, their earlier jeers replaced by uneasy glances. The cruel bet was unraveling into something darker, something far beyond entertainment. Angela placed the counterfeit chip on the table, its shiny casing betraying the cheap replica inside. She held it up for all to see. "This isn't just about fixing an engine," she said quietly, her voice cutting through the tense silence. "This is about uncovering the truth." Bradford's forced smirk faltered, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. The mask of arrogance was cracking, and Angela knew the storm was about to break wide open. What Angela uncovered next would shake not just Bradford, but every man in that room. Stay tuned. The silence inside Platinum Motors was thick enough to choke on as Angela slid into the driver's seat of the Lamborghini. Her fingers rested on the ignition key, steady as stone, though every eye in the room bore down on her with the weight of judgment. Bradford Steele leaned against a pillar, his smirk forced, his hands twitching, as though he could sense the ground shifting beneath him. "Go ahead," he called mockingly, though his voice cracked slightly. "Let's see you embarrass yourself." Angela ignored him. She had removed the counterfeit chip, recalibrated the system, and restored the software to factory specifications. Every connection had been double-checked, every parameter aligned. This was no gamble. This was science, skill, and experience sharpened over years of doubt and rejection. She took a breath, turned the key, and in an instant the Lamborghini roared to life. The sound was no weak sputter or hesitant cough. It was thunder, deep and flawless, filling the dealership with a vibration that rattled the champagne glasses in their stems. The walls themselves seemed to tremble with the precision of Italian engineering restored to its rightful glory. For 3 long seconds, there was silence, as if no one dared to believe what they had just heard. Then came the gasps. The laughter that had mocked her hours earlier dissolved into stunned disbelief. Men who had bet against her stared at one another, pale and speechless, their arrogance stripped away with the sound of that engine. Bradford's face drained of color, his smirk collapsing into horror. Impossible, he muttered, stumbling forward as though the car were a mirage. How, how did you do that? Angela stepped out with quiet grace, her overalls still stained, her hands steady. Simple, she said, her voice clear. I removed the unauthorized modifications, replaced the counterfeit parts, and reprogrammed the system to factory specifications. Henry Lawson stepped up beside her, holding his tablet, his voice turning formal. Mr. Steele, we need to discuss the severity of what we found. The chip installed in this car was counterfeit, cheap, and dangerous. It caused overheating, system conflicts, and could have led to a catastrophic engine fire. Miss Carter just saved your life. The crowd erupted in murmurs, their expressions shifting from amusement to outrage. Counterfeit? One man repeated, his face darkening. Are you saying someone deliberately put her life or ours in danger? Angela's gaze flicked to Bradford, who shifted uncomfortably. The question is not whether it was a mistake, she said calmly, but who profited from selling these parts. Henry connected his laptop to a small projector, and in seconds, corporate documents flashed across the marble wall. This counterfeit chip came from a company called Performance Plus Modifications, Henry announced. Its majority shareholder, with 60% of the shares, is none other than Bradford Steele. Gas filled the room. What? One man shouted. You sold me a kit last month, another cried, his face twisted with anger. My Aventador's been misfiring ever since. A third voice, furious and trembling, echoed across the hall. Bradford, you lied to us. You told us these were factory originals. Panic spread through Bradford's expression as his empire of deceit collapsed. This is ridiculous. He sputtered, his words tripping over each other. I tax records, receipts, email. The proof was undeniable. Bradford Steele hadn't just mocked Angela to cover his own arrogance. He had orchestrated an entire fraud scheme, sabotaging cars with counterfeit parts for millions. The last room was gone, replaced by Erupted, warm and genuine, not mocking, not cruel, respect earned the hard way. Angela smiled quietly, remembering the girl she had once been, standing in her grandfather's junkyard, tightening bolts with hands too small for the wrench. He had told her engines didn't care about gender or color, and now at last the world had begun to see that truth. Meanwhile, Bradford Steele's fate was the opposite. His company collapsed under FBI investigation, lawsuits drained his fortune, and his so-called friends abandoned him. Once a man who mocked others from marble showrooms, he now worked at a used car lot on the outskirts of town, earning minimum wage, his name spoken only with disdain. The irony was not lost on Angela. At her celebration, Henry Lawson clinked his glass and said with a wry smile, "The man who said women don't understand engines now works under a security protocol created by the very woman he tried to humiliate." Angela laughed softly, but her eyes were thoughtful. "You know what the best revenge was," she said. "Not destroying him, but proving that excellence has no color, no gender, no limits. The real victory is building something they can never take away." Her words rang like a hymn, simple and powerful. True justice had not come from vengeance, but from transformation, turning pain into progress. Subscribe now for more stories where justice roars louder than arrogance.